Now at 6, the man who could be put to death if convicted tries to hurt himself. Good evening, I'm Jennifer Griswold. In between witnesses in the murder trial, the defendant, Aubrey Trail, pulled out an object and put it to his neck. Senior reporter Jake Wazikowski was in the courthouse when it happened and tells us if the trial will go on.
Bailey is innocent and I curse you all.
An outburst in the Aubrey Trail trial, then a gasp from the crowd.
Jesus!
The defendant, accused of first-degree murder, makes a statement and harms himself.
Bailey is innocent and I curse you all.
Jesus! Stop recording.
Trail slashes his neck multiple times. Officials haven't confirmed what he used to harm himself or how he got it. The act takes place in front of the jury, judge, and Sidney Loof's family. Trail goes to the hospital, bandaged up. About 3 hours later, Judge Vicki Johnson returns with the jury, but Trail isn't present. She says they'll proceed on Tuesday with testimony, but talks to each individual juror about what happened and tells them to disregard it.
I'm going to order that Mr. Trail appear in handcuffs for the balance of the trial for obvious reasons. He is not here today at my instruction. You will not infer anything into either of these things, nor consider it as any evidence of guilt or innocence.
Judge Johnson tells the jury it will be hard to avoid media coverage, but they have to, so there isn't a mistrial. And I just spoke with the defense team of Aubrey Trail. They say it's under investigation what item he actually used to slash his throat and where he got it. They say he will be here on Tuesday morning, and they still feel that they can get a fair trial even after Monday's incident. Reporting in Wilbur, Jake Wazikowski, 3 News Now.
And senior reporter Jake Wazikowski joins me now live since returning from Saline County. And Jake, you have been covering this trial since last week. You were in the courthouse when this happened today. Describe what that was like.
Well, it started off pretty typical. It was they were going on to their 4th witness for the day. They had just sworn in the witness. All of a sudden, Trail says something, which you heard throughout the video there. He said, "Curse you all," and then that's when the commotion ensued from there. From hearing the descriptions, there was a stabbing motion or a slashing motion to his throat. That's when the deputies jumped in. You saw the attorneys jumping out of the way. From that point, Judge Vicki Johnson, she cleared the entire courtroom so the deputies could subdue him, get him some medical help, and then get him in that ambulance. Probably about 10 to 15 minutes after the incident happened, he's in the ambulance heading to the hospital, and then we don't see him for the rest of the day.
We've had a lot of people on social media wanting to know, what did he use to cut himself? They also want to know, what is his condition right now? Do we have those answers?
Lots of speculation as to what he used. What I can tell you is that a person that I talked to told me that it was not a pen. It was some sort of possible shank or shiv that he may have had on him. There's an investigation into what was used and how he obtained it, how he got it, into the courtroom. At that point, his condition, I didn't have an update, but he was taken to the hospital, and it was unclear if he was actually. I believe he was possibly released from the hospital, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, obviously we'll learn more about that, especially if trial goes on as expected. It's supposed to tomorrow. So with this, though, we know last week there was also a day where he wasn't in court, which is kind of unusual for a defendant not to be in court for a trial like this. Talk about that situation. What was happening there? Well,
it was supposed to be the first day of trial, and he never showed up. We heard he may have been having a medical episode, but we didn't hear much about it until the next day. We all just kind of sat in limbo wondering what was going on, and turns out he did have to go to the hospital that day, so the entire first day of trial was postponed until the next day when he could show up. But now, obviously, the second time he's been to the hospital since the trial started just last week.
You've been covering court proceedings for us here at 3 News Now for many years now. You've been sitting in a lot of trials. How does his behavior, his actions, this trial as a whole, how does all of it stack up compared to others?
It's interesting because from my experience, you start to see a pattern with each trial. Capital murder case, we'll say that. It seems to be that the defendants, they always want to try to control certain situations. You look at Nico Jenkins, he always talked to try to control situations. You look at Anthony Garcia sleeping throughout much of his trial and sentencing hearings after that. We've heard phone calls that Aubrey Trail has had with anchor Courtney Johns, and she talks about the different things that he tells her and how he says he wants to take responsibility. He'll say one thing, then he'll say another. Here he's trying to protect Bailey Boswell by shouting this and possibly, I don't know if he intended to kill himself, but he obviously intended to harm himself there. And so it seems like it's another pattern in these capital murder cases where the defendant is trying to possibly control the situation or have any sort of control over the situation and make these sort of outbursts or try to harm themselves like this.
All right, Jake, thanks so much for your insight. You'll be covering this as the trial goes on. So we look for your insight on air and online. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Let's take a live look, or you can see all of our stories we've done on the trial, plus the most up-to-date information as it continues. That's on our website right there, 3newsnow.com.